What's up, y'all? T Brown 31 here with Jay About the Great. We're back with another episode of the Last Word podcast. We now have only just a third of the season left to go, so go ahead and tell us what's coming up on the show today.
We'll be recapping two big college football games from this past weekend, including Michigan's dominant win over their rival Ohio State. Then we'll be covering the U.S. men's team World Cup journey so far as they advance to the knockout stage.
All right, it sounds good. Definitely exciting with the U.S. national team advancing. We'll get to that later on. But as always, the timestamps are going to be down in the description. Check those out if you want. With that being said, we go ahead and start off with the NFL and the Eagles getting a win on Sunday Night Football over the Packers, in which we saw Jordan Love actually come into play most of the fourth quarter after Aaron Rodgers left with an injury.
Yeah, so a very exciting game overall. Eagles win 40-33, pretty tight-knit game as far as offense goes. Didn't start out that way. Started out the Eagles were up 13-0, missed an extra point, but we're still looking pretty good. And you think, oh, well, with the Packers we've seen this season, there's no fight here. Packers came out and actually took the lead for a little bit, and it became somewhat of a battle going back and forth. And Aaron Rodgers going down definitely didn't think the Packers at all. Jordan Love did play well. The Eagles are just a better team this year and were able to kind of clutch up and close it off. So Jalen Hurts goes 16 for 28, gets 153 yards, throws 2 touchdowns, no picks, and he led his team in rushing with 157 yards, at least 100 of which I believe he got in the first quarter. So just a dominant game for him. Miles Sanders is right behind him with 143 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and Kenneth Gainwell was able to get 39 yards on the ground and a touchdown as well. Altogether, the Eagles had 363 rushing yards. It's an incredible ground game for them. Devontae Smith led them in receiving with 50 yards, but it was A.J. Brown and Quez Watkins who brought in the 2 touchdowns on 46 and 35 yards, respectively. A.J. Brown did, however, lose a fumble, and then Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott were able to pick off Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers himself went 11 for 16, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Did end up going down with that injury. Not the best game from him, not the worst either. The picks definitely hurt, but decent efficiency, decent yardage, got 2 touchdowns. Jordan Love comes in, however, and looks like a pretty good NFL starting QB. He goes 6 for 9, 113 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions. I guess one of the league's tougher defenses, so definitely a really good showing for him. A.J. Dillon led the Packers in rushing with 64 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones was able to pick up 43 on the ground. Jones continued to make a splash in the air as he got 53 yards and a touchdown, but it's Christian Watson who continues his dominance and got 110 yards and a touchdown, finally finding his legs in that Packers team. Randall Cobb was also able to snag a touchdown as well. And then it was Quay Walker who recovered that A.J. Brown fumble. So a really exciting game, a lot of action going on, a lot of players kind of making some big splashes in this game. But it's the Eagles who were able to kind of stay with it and hold off the Packers. And what would have been this season a pretty big upset, maybe last season would have just been kind of a normal game.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the game, I didn't really think that, Green Bay would have much of a chance in this, which is, again, coming into the season, you would not think like, all right, Green Bay is not going to have much of a chance against Philly. Like, you wouldn't make that statement. But with the way things have been going this season, it makes perfect sense. And I was pleasantly surprised. That first drive, obviously, they threw an interception after Philly got the touchdown on their first drive. And I'm like, okay, here we go. It's going to be a mess. But they were able to come out in that next drive and 50 yards back to back total for Aaron Jones and then A.J. Dillon. So even though they didn't, have like 100 and something rushing yards each, and that was a big issue pretty much the entire season. The fact that the running game has basically not been able to get off the ground at all, while the receivers obviously have been having problems all season. So coming into the game, I didn't really expect much there, but they able to run the ball decently well, and they helped out in the passing game there, getting that first 30-yard catch and run for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, 20 yards rushing for the TD. So just right off the bat, it was like, okay, they might be able to stay in this. I didn't think they would win, but they're at least showing some kinds of life on offense after that interception to start off with. And then Philly, they turn over on downs. And boom, Green Bay gets the lead 14-13 with a touchdown as well to Randall Cobb from Aaron Rodgers. Old age-old connection there. And I'm like, okay, this might turn into a shootout real quick. So I guess I was wrong. I didn't really think, again, that the Packers would have much of a chance there. But they were staying with them in the first half for the most part. up until they were able to actually get a touchdown and almost take the lead after Philly fumbled. But unfortunately for them, they missed the extra point. So it was stuck at 2020. And then it ended up 27-20 at the end of the half. But to say, again, that I was pleasantly surprised is an understatement. I mean, this is probably the best they looked on offense for the most part in a while. I mean, they've just been bad on offense. The defense has been bad too. And in that first half, they looked pretty good. So it was just a matter of whether they can keep up with the Eagles. Because, like you said, Jalen Hurts had already run for like 100 yards or something in the first quarter. I mean, it was getting kind of ridiculous already with that running game. But moving into the the second half, I mean, it was just a question of whether they'd be able to keep up with them. And they sort of did. But then trying to match field goals with touchdowns coming out of that halftime break. Eagles get a touchdown and they're already down 14 just like that. So now you got to be able to stay with them. And they pretty much couldn't. And as I mentioned in the opening, Aaron Rodgers, he goes out with an injury. He had the thumb coming in, and it looks like he messed up his ribs a little bit. He was holding them. And there was a drive in the third quarter, that last drive that he played, where you can clearly tell like, every single play. He was throwing the ball, something was wrong. And then that next drive that they had, Jordan Love came in and he looked, I would say, pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's what a big takeaway for me, right? I got to give big props to the Eagles. Big win here, of being really resilient against a pretty good Packers team that their record maybe doesn't show just how good they are. Um, but Jordan Love really came in as a pleasant surprise. We've been kind of anticipating his big debut. Wanted to see how he's going to come in. He has to come in against this Eagles defense. This Eagles defense, not the best in the league, but has been pretty tough. They're really good at getting to the ball, picking it off, making quarterbacks look kind of dumb sometimes. And Jordan Love stays away from turnovers. He only throws 3 passes that don't end up becoming completions. So 6 for 9 is a pretty good ratio. Obviously, isn't able to win the game, but I think I'm really impressed with Jordan Love. I don't think it's Jordan Love time in Green Bay yet. I think Aaron Rodgers has been serviceable enough this season. We'll have to see how bad that injury is. But I think it's looking really good for Jordan Love to be able to take over that job soon. Now, does Aaron leave next season? All that is probably for later in the season for us to discuss. But definitely a good look for the young quarterback to battle it out with the Eagles defense like that. And just really, I'll say from there, just to turn the attention back to the Eagles, just you have to really respect that run game. Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, all just kind of running all over the field. Boston Scott had a decent amount of production as well. So just an incredible run game. And I think from there, you really got to credit the Eagles' running offense for one. Then we got to look at the Packers. Like, man, you got to stop that run, bro. Like you, I know they're all really good runners, but you can't allow all that to come at you, right? 100 yards in the first quarter for a quarterback is crazy. And I know it's really hard to contain these guys, but these are also pro defenders. And I think Matt LaFleur really has to look at this one and be like, whoa, we can't let anybody run all over us again. Because the Eagles have a really good running team, but there are some teams in this league that have probably better running backs, maybe a slightly better running quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts is probably at the top of that list, but teams are really going to want to exploit that if they know they can just run straight through those holes that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Packers defense really got as much criticism as they should have this season. At least not in the national media. A lot of it is just talking about Aaron and the receivers not being on the same page. That was pretty much the story of the whole season. But besides the running game not being able to get going, the defense has not been good since that Giants game. I mean, maybe the Giants game when we first saw it live, it was like, okay, maybe that was just a fluke. But as the season's gone on, the defense has just not really been that good. And generally, it's been getting cut up in the passing game. And with the guys that they got back there, I mean, Jair Alexander, for starters, I mean, you would think they'd be better. But it wasn't the passing game that killed them. The running game, I mean, just absolutely destroyed them in this one. And when you have your running back rush for less yards than your quarterback, but your running back still runs for 140 yards, I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I mean, I think he's done this a couple of times, but he actually ran for more yards in this game than he passed for, just slightly. But the running game for them, I mean, they just could not figure out how to stop it. And this is what Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico alluded to during the game. You bring in AJ Brown from the Titans. You got a Heisman winner Devontae Smith. You got some other good receivers. I know Goddard isn't there right now because he's injured. And then you have Jalen Hurts, to run the way he is, and Miles Sanders running the way he is behind that offensive line. It's going to be incredibly tough to stop him. And games like they had against Washington, probably not going to happen too often. So unless you can get a lot of turnovers against this team, I think it's going to be really difficult to be able to stop him. So as you don't really need Jalen to be throwing the ball for 300 yards if he's able to pick up, 100, at least 100 yards rushing and then around 200 passing, not turning over. And Miles Sanders is also able to get the ground game going for him. So, this is pretty much speaking the obvious here. They haven't lost but one game this season. They're 10-1, but it is going to be very tough to be able to stop this team going forward.
Yeah, and I think this game just kind of exemplified the offensive strength, at least, right? He doesn't have a bad passing day at all. 153 yards is probably lower than what we expect from most big quarterbacks, but he's still he matches that with his rushing yards. Still gets like a total of 300 yards. His running back gets about 150. He's able to get pretty good production out of Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Quez Watkins. So the Eagles really just kind of put their offensive talents on show. Now, the defense has been better this season. They have not often allowed this much. They have had games where they have allowed a lot of points. I'm not saying that. But usually look a little more put together. They did here. Now, they did pick off Rodgers twice for sure. But overall, defense has been a little sturdier, and that's just being nitpicky. But this Eagles team can be really tough to bring down this season. And yeah, it's just going to come down to getting the ball out of their hands. You got to force turnovers, or you're just not going to be able to stop them.
Yeah, and then just going back to Jordan Love real quick, like you mentioned, just 3 incompletions overall, and none of his throws were really bad. Obviously, the touchdown was pretty much mostly Christian Watson, who's seen and found out what he was doing this season after, obviously, that first game against the Vikings where he got killed by everybody for that drop. Most of the work was done by Christian on that play, but he looked pretty good in just that little small sample size. And yeah, I don't anticipate them shutting down Aaron. If he can go, they're going to play Aaron, especially against the Bears coming up this week. So, I don't think it's Jordan Love time yet, but you do have to kind of at least, if you can get him in at some point and just play a little bit, you got to see what he really is, because this is his 3rd year now. We know Aaron sat behind Brett for 3 years, but I feel like Brett, at least, wasn't as good as Aaron at this point in their careers at the same time. Aaron is the back-to-back MVP, and Brett was given more signs that he was going to retire, and he did. And then he came back. So I think they really need to figure out, what they're going to do with Jordan Love, because I don't anticipate him wanting to sit behind Aaron for another year. Even if Aaron's one of the greatest, you draft me as to play quarterback, like eventually I want to see the field. So
yeah,
with the season pretty much going the way it is, even if Aaron starts, you can at least get Jordan Love in there a little bit.
Yeah,